roof on my house, a metal roof, before I did my solar. And my insurance still says that it has the asphalt shingles. Anyway, I was going to update that. Now, am I supposed to tell the insurance company I put the solar panel on too?
You know, you can. I did just to list it as an asset.
Right.
You know, I guess it depends on your insurance company. If you've got a fixed dollar amount, or if you have a replacement value or something like that. But it's worthwhile giving them a call.
But Jay, yours isn't on your roof. Yours is ground mounted, isn't it?
Right.
I mean, part of the question would be what the risk is. It's probably, I don't know for sure, but I would think it would be an issue for them having it on the roof. Not an issue, but it would be a different analysis for them.
Right.
Possibly. I don't know. With my insurance, they just have a fixed number. You know, you're insured to 200,000 or whatever. So they kind of like don't really care. But I did tell them anyway, you know, just to keep it, just in case, you know. The big thing they're worried about, my insurance company, is the four-wheeler, you know, the 4x4 that I have. That's the thing that freaks them out. Solar arrays, houses, they don't care about that. It's just that they know you're going to kill yourself on that little four-wheeler. So,
right.
Is it life insurance or house insurance that they're worried about?
I think they're worried about, well, it's my house, so I don't know. I guess they figure somebody could steal it, somebody could hurt themselves, you know, whatever.
So let me pose a spin on this insurance question that Chris has. Doesn't solar panels sort of block UV rays, which is destructive to roofs?
Yeah, you would think that little area might last a little longer.
Yeah, I would think for asphalt shingles anyway, not metal.
Right.
Probably it won't make a difference. But yeah, and the other thing with insurance to think about is your utility may require a certain amount of liability insurance as part of the interconnection agreement. So you'll need to check that when you go to do the install. Typically, your homeowner's policy has a certain level of liability coverage in case somebody slips and falls on the sidewalk or whatever. But the utility may require in excess of what your policy currently covers. So double check that if you're installing. I know with ours, they required $500,000 in liability in case it damaged the grid in some way. Mine, I had 200,000, I think, as part of my policy. So I simply just increased that, and it only added $3 or $4 a year to the cost of the insurance. It was nothing really dramatic. So,
Jay, do you think that's normal? I'm just curious, because if you get all of the qualified, you know, I forget what the initials are, but all the California code qualified stuff that everybody requires nowadays on the interconnect agreements, I mean, it seems like it's uninformed to be worried about whether or not you're going to damage the grid.
yeah, that doesn't stop lawyers from putting those things into contracts. The fact that there's no risk doesn't matter. They're still going to require it if they can get away with it, and that's typically something you're going to run into. Bill, you had a question?
Yes, in Houston, a lockable disconnect is required. I understand that PG&E in California does not have that option. And I wonder whether y'all have that option or that requirement in your areas.
Well, it was put in the last version of the code. I think the 2020 code said that your disconnects have to be lockable. It doesn't mean there has to be a lock on them. They just have to be lockable. So my guess is California does require it, you know, because the code now requires it. If they've adopted the 2020 code, not every state has adopted the 2020 code. So if they're still under the 2017, it may not be required.
I'd like to add something about it, homeowners insurance. They'll raise a rate for any reason that they can think of, that's for sure. But on the counterpoint is that I just bought 2 insurance plans and did my due diligence, and I found out that when you put the valuation of the house property in there, they automatically calculate your personal property value.
Mhm.
And the first one they came up with was, I mean, I had $350,000 worth of personal property, which was just, whoa, way out.
It's all the money in your mattress.
Well, the higher the
Jay, I
personal
told
property
you
cover, the
not to
higher the
tell
premium.
anybody about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I had worked with them and they brought it down to about $280,000. Then I did some shopping around and I found one insurance company, KIN, Ken's, and they brought it down to about 60,000. And the
Mhm.
amount of premium went down drastically because of that.
Yeah.
And when you talk to the insurance people, said, well, that's what the computer does, so you have to pay for the $350,000 of personal property.
Mhm.
So the counterpoint to raising rates from the insurance is to find insurance where you can lower the rates.
Yeah. Keep checking and keep checking around too. Yep. Well, let me get into some of the news here. Let's see, a couple of items. One of our sometimes joiners, Ryan, out in California, sent me this one about there's a $2.5 billion project. It's a high voltage DC transmission line that's being added to connect MISO, which is the Midwestern Regional Authority, with PJM, which is the Pennsylvania, Chicagoland, Michigan, Ohio regional. What's the term for it? RTO, regional
Yeah,
transmission.
RTO, yeah.
Anyway, these are going to be buried under along train lines, which is interesting. A 350-mile underground transmission line. And the idea is to connect all of the Midwestern wind turbines to the East Coast population base. So that's going to be interesting. We've talked about upgrading of the transmission system. The big news this week is the Department of Commerce is considering expanding the tariffs on solar panels. And they're looking at 50 to 250% tariffs on panels imported from Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam, which is going to have major impacts since about 80% of all the solar panels currently are imported. They anticipate
The last batch I bought, 30 were from Thailand.
Pardon? All right, so they anticipate that we only have about 8 gigawatts of capacity per year of domestic production, and they're projecting 30 gigawatts of installation during the next year. So if this goes through, SEIA, Southeastern, or the Solar Energy Industry Association, estimated we could lose about 18 gigawatts of installation over the next year. And apparently just having this proposed before the Department of Commerce has frozen all orders from those countries. They're unwilling to take orders because it could be by the time they fulfill them, the price has doubled or gone up 2.5 times. So it's a big deal, and they're supposed to rule on it this week. So, you know, the headlines were all like, should I hire 1,000 guys or should I fire 1,000 guys? I don't know which. It all depends on if this thing goes through.
Is the current tariff zero? You said it was going to go up 2.5 times. Is it zero now for those countries?
The only tariffs are on Chinese panels. And of course, China moved a lot of production to Malaysia, you know, Thailand, Vietnam, you know, Bangladesh. So, you know, tariffs are usually really bad trade policy. You know, they're basically just a tax. And what ends up happening is what's happening. Okay, somebody moves or you get around it somehow or whatever. So let's hope wiser heads prevail and they don't put this in place. But
Jay, I agree with what the result is, but isn't the idea they're trying to spur U.S. domestic production?
That's the idea. That's the idea. Whether in fact it's going to happen, Because it takes multiple years to establish domestic production. And these tariffs are usually short-lived. Like the Chinese tariff was supposedly initially a 3-year tariff. Well, if I'm thinking about building a solar plant, by the time I get that thing operational, the tariff may be no longer in place. So the question is domestic production of solar panels the best use of our energy, as far as policy? Because panel production has not been very lucrative, and it does not employ that many people. Installation employs far, far more people than production. So if you're going to try and incentivize production by cutting 50,000 installation jobs, it's pretty bad policy. When the goal might be to get 3,000 more production guys.
But in the long run, it's like giving your gas supply to Vladimir Putin and telling him when to turn it on and turn it off. The Chinese can cut the panels off as easy as they can cut them on.
Yeah, but I always think about, like, there's a big production plant in Toledo. It's like 100% owned by the Koreans. It employs almost all Korean nationals. Well, is that American? Just because it's physically located in Toledo. If Korea got mad at us, they could shut down production in Toledo as easily as they could in Seoul. Just simply close their doors.
If it got that bad, I somehow think that the Truman administration would come back and nationalize it, and we'd all of a sudden be having panels coming back out. Yeah,
could be, but I just think it's bad policy. From my, it's like, as a good Republican, we should be against tariffs. So
I can tell you that in Chicago area here, electronics, in the year 1980-82, everything went offshore because of the lower price over there, and I watched tens of thousands.
There you go. Hey, Bill.
But there's this thing called globalization. In other words, and there's nothing stopping it.
Yeah.
The world is getting infiltrated. There's how many refugees? 2-3 million refugees now will do work for anything because they have to get some food on the table.
I think part of the problem with the solar panel thing is this is primarily an automated process. So cost of labor is not the issue. It's government policies where, for instance, China decided to target this as an industry that they would subsidize so they could get a foothold and dominate this on a global. And the same is true, I'm sure, for Malaysia. The same is true for Thailand. These are government policies subsidizing the production. And the US's argument is, your government is subsidizing production. You're basically dumping these products on our market at below cost. So we need to kind of even the playing field. However, when we do this, we just call it a jobs program. And that's all good. And if people retaliate against us, then they're horrible, protectionists. So we need to kind of put some sanity into the whole thing and say, if they want to spend their money giving us cheap solar panels, I'd say just go ahead and do it. I'll take your solar panels.
Jay, have you also seen? Oh, go ahead, Bob.
That's not their plan. I've been watching this. They will give loans to companies, Chinese companies in China, for 15 to 30 years, so that they can dominate the whole territory. They buy up worldwide, and they want to do it and sell it at below cost, so that one day they rise and then they own everything, and then they can dictate the pricing. And that plan is on the table right there.
The Japanese tried that too. It didn't work out that well. But on the other hand, have you seen that the Chinese have been cutting off electricity to plants? I know one of our plants has been shut down because
they've been going on for years. They have roving shutoffs. Motorola has it.
It's going on more now.
I would say this particular one, if I were making policy, I would say this industry is evolving so rapidly that a new production facility is better competitive than a 3-year-old facility. So let China dominate in obsolete technology if they want, because just as soon as they get a hold of the silicon market, we're going to move to perovskite or something else, or PERC manufacturing. So unless they want to keep underwriting forever and ever, I just think, we can second guess them, but by trying to put 250% tariffs on solar, not the right approach,
Yeah, that's not a good approach, but the objective of getting more production in the US probably wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, I don't disagree. So let's incentivize our own folks. We can do that if that is government policy.
Mhm.
Right now, what the government policy is, let's tax those people who want to buy those panels. And that's all tariff is a tax,
Yeah.
So we're
Mhm.
going to tax them.
I agree with you totally.
Yep.
All right, so that's the big item this week. Couple of things in microinverter news. Generac, the generator guys have just announced they're coming out with their own line of microinverters. They've got a dual connector, hooking up 2 panels to one microinverter, 720 watt. NEP, which stands for Northern Electric Power, also has a dual microinverter out there. AP Systems has a dual microinverter. They just announced one that's 960 volts, or watts it should be. I wrote volts. But that's available there. And of course, we've talked about before, Enphase is talking about their 8 series being dual, where you can hook up 2 panels to one. I tried to look up some prices on these, see if they, if the prices were comparable. They appear to be relatively comparable. All of these guys are in the sort of $150 to $200 range for these microinverters. So my guess is Enphase is going to start having some competition, which makes sense. They're becoming the dominant player out there in the residential marketplace. And then Don, you sent me a thing about the Kentucky Power, the net metering.
Yeah.
Do you remember those? I've made some notes, but.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think one of them, there were 2 that came in. I think one was LG&E, which is the big one over in Louisville.
Okay.
And the other one was Kentucky Utilities, which
Thank you
is
very
south of here. It's where
No, that'll do.
where my farm is. But I think one came in with the 76% of retail, and the other one came in with like 85% of retail as the reimbursement rates if you're connected to the grid. Which, reading the article, they obviously everybody wants 100, but I think some other ones have come back much worse than that in the past.
Yeah, they'd gone to the commission basically saying they wanted to pay 3.6 cents
Right.
per kilowatt hour. So basically in the net metering agreement, if retail, in this example, they were saying 10 cents, which seems relatively low to me, but they're saying, okay, they're selling it at 10 cents. They want to buy it at 3.5 cents.
Mhm.
And the commission came back and said, nope, not 3.5, but how about 7.5, which is probably what they were looking for to begin with anyway. That's the way those things usually go. Let's ask for 3.5 so we can get 7.
Mhm.
Oh, Bill, you're holding up one of those dually microinverters?
This is 4-in-1.
Oh, four of them.
4-in-1, and earlier on, they were about half the price of 4 in-phase microinverters. I haven't checked the price lately.
Who's
But-
the manufacturer?
Hoy Miles,
Hoy
Chinese
Miles.
company,
Uh,
Hoymiles.
Yeah, of course, the downside on that is then you've got 4 panels that are going to be subject to, it's basically like a string of 4. So if one's shaded, then all 4 are going to be affected, right?
I don't know whether they selectively, whether they separate it or what. I'll be honest with you. One of these days, I'll check it out and see what happens.
Yeah.
I can shade a panel and see what the output looks like with a clamp on.
Yeah, of course, the advantage of microinverters when you have a single microinverter attached to a single panel is each one operates independently. Now we're starting to say, okay, well, let's hook up 2. That's usually not a big deal because 2 panels operating, in tandem, you're not usually going to have big problems that way. But then you start getting 4, 6, 8, now you may as well be doing string inverters, if they're, each affected. So I think that was all the news I had. Did anyone else have any news or any questions before I jump in? I thought I'd demonstrate, there are a couple of free applications out there that I've run into for designing your solar. I know, Bob, you had mentioned Aurora Solar for the remote site assessments. And it's a good program, but it can be pricey unless you're doing it every day. But there are a couple of freebies out there that I was just going to demonstrate. So anybody?
Jay, there's the Ford Lightning news.
The what?
The Ford Lightning news, they announced the plants in Tennessee and Kentucky.
Yeah.
So, and if you watch the interview with the CEO, he was, I don't know, he didn't go into details obviously, but he was saying that if you have a Ford Lightning, he said, well, of course, if there's a power outage, you can power your house for 3 days with a fully charged Ford Lightning. So apparently they do expect some kind of a dual, back and forth charging system.
Yeah, I saw some of that in the literature about it. Of course, there's a lot of detail in there, how much power you're drawing.
A lot of assumptions in that 3 days.
Yeah, right. And it's not a hybrid, so you couldn't run the gas engine like a generator, whereas a hybrid vehicle you could. But I really have big hopes for the Ford Lightning. It's basically their F-150, but tricked out as an electric. And I think that's going to make electric vehicles macho. It's going to kind of bring another market segment into the electric vehicle world, especially when they start seeing just how much power, how much torque, the ability of using outlets. Because I know in that Lightning, they call it the frunk, which is when you open up the hood, right. There's a platform in there with like 6 electrical outlets that you can hook up, chop saws and other things too, if you were a construction guy, or your laptop, make it your home office. So stick your kids in there while you're driving. Yeah.
And they're also doing the battery production and integrating it. So they're building on.
Okay. Yeah, Bob?
Yeah, this is great information and I always look forward to hearing it. Is there a reference materials that can go back to on solar news that is coming on the market in real time or something like that?
Yeah, if you do a Google search, just latest solar news, I think it's Renewable Energy Magazine does a synopsis of the solar news. They pull from all the different articles. That's where I usually get the latest updates, and they update it real time. Every day as something new comes out on the marketplace. Most of them are just going to be, there's a project in Texas, there's a project in Wisconsin. It's kind of just repetitious, but occasionally, like this tariff article, there's some big news in there. So if you want to just double check that, every couple of days, it'll keep you up to date. Or show up every Tuesday for Solar Noon Tuesday.
Well, I like the idea of you recording things because when I don't show up, I go through it then.
Just like a podcast, huh?
It's also a good reference because things that I miss, I pick up the second time and stuff like that. It's really great.
Okay, good. Okay, anybody have anything before I jump into some of the software area? The 2 software that I'm going to talk about, I think I had mentioned one before. It's called PV Sketch, SKETCH. And PV Sketch, it's, let's see if I can go into my screen share. PV Sketch will produce reports that look something like this. So you can lay out, this is one that I did. It's a ground mounted system. So it takes Google Earth imagery and you can just lay out your solar array in that area. I'm not going to go through the program here, but it's kind of straightforward. You just have a clicking tool that you'll outline the area and it'll fill in based on the panels that you've selected, and it'll tell you their orientation and you set their angle. and then it'll tell you how much it's producing. So in this case, it's telling me 33 Canadian solar panels, N-phase inverters. This is the annualized energy production, 13,000. It'll break it down here by month. You know, what is the use and what is the production? So it has a little area where you can take your electric bill and just sort of type in how many kilowatt hours were used each month. So that's pretty straightforward. It's a very, very basic design program. It'll then tell you how much this array in this configuration will generate as a capacity factor. What's your first year savings? What's the savings over 20 years? And then what is the time frame for offsetting the initial investment? In this instance, it's 5.5 years to offset the initial. And then it gives you a little graph that shows how that works. And so in order to come up with those numbers, though, it also has you type in the cost per watt. So this is an estimated cost per watt. And it will ask you to add in all the different incentives. So there's the 26% investment tax credit. This was a commercial thing. So there, and going for the REAP grant, which is the agricultural grant. So there was a 25% agricultural grant. And then there was the accelerated depreciation, which is one reason why the costs come down pretty dramatically. And then it gives you some other information here. You can put your logos in here. I was doing this for SOPEC, which is an agency that evaluates sites for the REAP grants. And so it's a handy little program, gives a sense, kind of a broad overview, but not very powerful. So if you've used one like Bob had mentioned, Aurora Solar, I'm sure there are dozens of other ones. They'll go into much more detail. How
much does this one cost, Jay?
Oh, it has a couple of different options. If you do up to 5 a month, it's free.
Okay.
But if you want to generate a report, you got to pay $3. So, so you can design it and you can look at it, but it won't generate anything unless you go ahead and pay them the $3. If you're doing more than that, like up to 20 a month, it's $40 a month on a subscription basis.
And is this sufficient to put in with your applications for the utility and the local authorities and stuff? It'll cover. Is it designed to cover mostly what they usually ask for?
It's more financial. So it's not really going to give you. It's not going to generate one-line drawings or anything like that.
Okay, that's what I'm. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. The other one I ran into, are you guys seeing a different screen now? I'm just making sure. Same screen. Okay, let me stop sharing and then I'll jump in. All right, so this one, because what ended up happening, I was using PV Sketch, and then all of a sudden they started saying, you gotta register, you gotta subscribe, because you've used up your 5. And I said, well, it's 5 per month, and they wouldn't let me move forward. It was like they were acting like it was 5 total. So I got into contacting them. You said it was 5 per month, and finally, by the time they got back, I had found an alternative. And this one kind of makes me feel a little warmer and a little fuzzier, because this is a company called Open Solar, and it's an Australian company, and they're real upfront about it. They said they've developed this tool and they're giving it to everybody for free because they're populating it with product. And if you select the product, it then has an option for that manufacturer to kind of market to you. So if you go in and you pick N-phase microinverters, there's a little thing that comes up and says, do you want to find out more about N-phase microinverters? That kind of thing. So I'm cool with that. The program seems a lot more powerful. I thought I'd play this little, just a minute video.
Sales technology. We're making it available to all solar professionals everywhere in the world for free, so that you can create fast, accurate designs with our new Solar Touch technology, a digital experience for your customers with product content, education tools, and financing options, and online closing and payment. How easy was that? It's all delivered on a new cloud-based app for any device in office or on site, however you design and sell. It includes a configurable end-to-end business management tool to manage your customers through your process, with installation management tools and document generation. It includes world-leading design technology from the pioneers of solar design software, with pitch calculations, auto layout, auto stringing, and complete 3D modeling. To get started, simply open your account, brand it, and you'll be generating your first beautiful proposals on your very own tool in minutes.
Yeah, so this one, I've gone through one program. Let me see, I think I had it. Nope, that's not it. Anyway, I've generated one. It's pretty good. I found a little more complicated than the other program, but that's because it's a bit more powerful. And so I just have to get used to it. I had done a bunch with PV Sketch. Let's see if I can pull up the one just to give you a sense of. There we go. Yeah, this is what the report looks like with open solar. And it again allows you to put the logos in, and then it gives you the diagram, what it looks like, offset, very similar, gives you the performance, gives you some warm and fuzzies about how many tons of whatever it is that you're saving. And then it can give you a generation, your old bill, what your new bill should be, how much time before it pays for itself. In this case, the payback was 5 years, 3 months. And this is something I found pretty consistently when you incorporate the REAP grant into a small commercial enterprise, the payback is only around 4 or 5 years for these systems, almost with any utility, which to me, if you're a small business making any kind of money, it just doesn't make sense not to go after that and get your solar installed. So that gives you a sense of those. Anybody had experience with remote design tools? Have anything to add about that? Bob, you're muted. Bob, you're muted. There you go.
I've used quite a few, and the biggest thing I ran into is after actually doing the evaluation totally to find out that the air view of the place is old.
Yeah.
And I've had it both ways where vegetation was there that was young at one point and older now. And also had it where it was tore down. This guy says, what are you talking about? I tore down all these trees and stuff so I can put solar on my house.
Yeah.
So I haven't found a solution to that yet.
Yeah, in fact, if you notice that one that I showed as an example for open solar, I had to hang some solar panels out into midair because they had added a building and the building wasn't showing up on the imagery, but it was located right adjacent to. So, you know, it uses Google Earth. Almost all of these use Google Earth data. And if the data is a few years old, then that's what you get.
Well, I can tell you that with the Aurora Solar tool, I go out and take photographs of the area, and then I edit that aerial view and I can edit the trees and stuff like that out of it that's not there and then redo it again.
Yeah, I know with like Aurora Solar, they use LiDAR imagery, right? Which is like a three-dimensional, I forget LiDAR is like light radar or whatever, but yeah, it's only as good as the data that you have to work with. So it doesn't replace a site visit. You still got to do the site visit, but it's good if you're just sort of doing a first brush evaluation, so that if you've got somebody who may or may not be a client, go ahead and do a remote assessment, because it's not worth driving an hour out to their place and spending an hour, on somebody with a 10% chance of actually signing up. But once you got them as a client, then go ahead and do a real site assessment. Anybody else have any comments on remote site assessment tools? If I were you, I'd go ahead and sign up for that open solar, just to play with it, to get a sense of how these tools work, what their limitations are, what they're capable of doing. Then if you do decide, if you get into this and you're doing a lot of them, it may not be the right tool for you, but they're all fairly similar. They all do pretty close to the same thing. Okay. All right, well, that's all I have for everybody today. Anybody else have anything they want to add to the good of the cause here? Nope. All right, well, see you all next Tuesday. Enjoy your week.
Thank you, Jay.
Bye-bye.